All right, let's talk about a place that's really more of an idea than just a spot on a map, Greenwich Village. We're talking about a corner of New York City that has, well, always marched to the beat of its own drum. It's a place where American culture has been written and then completely rewritten for over 100 years. And hey, if you need proof that the village plays by its own rules, just try walking around. Seriously, look at this. You've got West 4th Street crossing West 10th Street. Now, how in the world is that even possible? It's the perfect little symbol for a neighborhood that just flat out refuses to be straightened out.
So, that really gets us to the big question, doesn't it? In the ultimate grid city, a place defined by right angles and numbered streets, how did this pocket of beautiful chaos even happen? The answer you'll see tells us everything we need to know about the village's rebellious soul.
To really get the village, we've got to go back. I mean, way back. Before the skyscrapers, before the subways, to a time when this part of Manhattan was basically a world away from the city itself.
You know, its name pretty much tells the whole story. Back in the 1600s, Dutch settlers called this place Greenwich, which just means green district. And that's exactly what it was, a leafy green hamlet of farms and country estates. It was the quiet escape from that bustling little port of New Amsterdam way down south. And a few key moments in history really cemented its unique character. First, it was a country escape. Then it became a safe haven from yellow fever outbreaks that were plaguing the city. But here's the kicker, the really crucial part. In 1811, when the city planners rolled out that famous Manhattan grid, the village was already a thriving little town with its own winding lanes. So they just kind of built around it. They left it alone.
And with its quirky layout safe, the village boomed as a place to live. That's where we get this classic architecture, the Federal and Greek Revival row houses. See, they aren't massive or intimidating. They're built on a human scale. This style created this really intimate, walkable vibe, which turned out to be the perfect stage for everything that came next.
Okay, let's jump forward to the 20th century, because this is where this unique place becomes a total magnet for America's most creative, most radical minds. The village wasn't just somewhere you lived anymore, it became the place to be.
And I mean, just look at this cast of characters it drew in. We're talking poets and playwrights who were turning American literature upside down, political radicals who were challenging everything, and of course, the folk singers who gave a voice to an entire generation. For all of them, the village was their home base. You want to know the spirit of the place? Nothing captures it better than this little story. In 1917, a crew of artists, including the famous Marcel Duchamp, climbed all the way to the top of the Washington Square Arch, fired off some cap guns, and declared the village a free and independent republic. Yeah, it was a prank, but it was also a dead serious statement about who they were. And the neighborhood itself was a huge part of this creative boom. It wasn't just magic in the air. Those winding streets made you feel like you could discover something new around every corner. And, crucially, the rents were cheap enough that an artist could actually afford to live and create there. The very layout of the place fostered this amazing sense of independence. So the village wasn't just a home for brilliant individuals, it became the actual birthplace for entire movements that would literally change America. Its coffee houses, its dark little clubs, its streets, they were all laboratories for new ways of thinking.
Think about it. The Beat generation found its East Coast pulse right here. The 60s folk revival was born in its clubs. It became a global capital for jazz. And maybe most importantly, it became the cradle of the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. It was this incredible convergence of countercultures, all in one place.
But this whole ecosystem, this special character that took centuries to build, it was about to face its biggest threat yet, from a very different, very rigid vision of what a modern city was supposed to look like. And this led to a legendary showdown, a real battle for the soul of the neighborhood. On one side, you had the city's master builder, Robert Moses, who wanted to ram the superhighway straight through Washington Square Park. And on the other, you had residents, led by the writer and activist Jane Jacobs, who argued that the neighborhood's messiness was exactly what made it great. Well, Jacobs and her neighbors won, and that victory basically helped kickstart the entire modern urban preservation movement. And get this, while that whole fight was going on, the music was just getting louder and louder. Places like the Village Vanguard became legendary. Some of the most important jazz albums ever were recorded live right there. And over at Cafe Wall, a young guy named Bob Dylan was pretty much changing music forever. These weren't just bars, they were cultural incubators. And then, a night came that changed American history. A routine police raid on a gay bar called the Stonewall Inn on Christopher Street sparked days of riots. Now, it wasn't the first protest for gay rights, not by a long shot, but it was the one that lit the fuse on a national movement. Once again, a little street in the village became ground zero for a nationwide fight for freedom. So, after all that, where does that leave the village today? Let's fast forward to the present and see how this incredible, layered history shapes the neighborhood right now. Well, this number kind of says it all. In 2017, the average price for a square foot of residential property here was over $2,000. The struggling artists, the writers, the very people who define the village, they've mostly been priced out. The old Bohemian haven has become one of the most expensive zip codes in the entire country. And this comparison right here tells that whole story of transformation perfectly. You have the modest, elegant row house, the kind that once housed a family or a bunch of artists, right next to the chic, exclusive restaurants of today. The beautiful old shell is still there, but you can bet the life inside has changed dramatically. But the story isn't quite that simple. The spirit of the place is still there, living on in its landmarks. The Cherry Lane Theater is still putting on groundbreaking plays. You can still get a cappuccino at Cafe Reggio. The jazz clubs are still humming every night. Those cultural anchors, they're still holding the neighborhood down. When you look through that arch, the same spot where they declared their mock independence, you see the modern city rising behind it. The village's long, long history of rebellion, of just being different, isn't some fringe idea anymore. Now it's celebrated. It's preserved. It's become a core part of its identity. In the end, its rebellion became its heritage. Which kind of leaves us with one final big question. As our cities keep changing, as rents go up and people move around, what is it exactly that allows the unique spirit of a place like Greenwich Village to endure? Is it the old buildings, the history, or is it something else, something you can't quite put your finger on? It's a question worth asking, really, about any community.